So this episode is a little different. I haven't got a typical guest with me. Instead, oh, you have something on your beard. I'm such a good host that I told you beforehand.
Is it gone?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm. Have I got anything on my face?
No.
Oh. For me, this podcast has a simple mission, and it is to act as a bridge between our generations. We talk about life, we talk about culture, music, their successes, their failures, their regrets, and their legacies. So this episode is a little different.
What camera am I using?
That's your camera. That's mine. Where's my camera? And the episode is different because I haven't got a traditional guest that fits the profile of previous guests that I've had on the podcast. Today I thought we might do something different. There's been, more than 10 episodes of this podcast, and something that's always occurred to me is it would be nice for us to review or evaluate some of the common responses that have been on the podcast. But I should introduce this guy. So this is Lawrence. Lawrence was, I would say, crucial to the actually kicking off the podcast. So he was one of the first people who, when I shared the idea of the podcast with, saw the value, saw the vision, and just encouraged me to get it going. And he's a celebrity. If you don't know him, you don't know anybody. I'm joking. So this is Lawrence, and Lawrence has been a great friend of mine for a number of years now. So I just, long story short, I thought let's just see. We might have some insight, or maybe not. We'll just talk about it. Yeah. One of the first things that I thought we should react to is something that has always puzzled me. Quite a few of the previous male guests that I've had on the podcast, whenever I've gotten to the question about whether they had a crush or whether they had somebody who they were dating before the person that they eventually got married to, it was always a tricky conversation to ask because some people are cagey about it. They don't want to talk about it. But why? Something that's always come up without fail, all the male guests say a version of from the first or the second time when I met my wife to be now. I knew that was who I was going to get married to. And every single time it catches me off guard because I'm like, really? You decided from... So I guess what we should probably try and talk about is why is that the case? And why was it true for them and not true for us?
Is it not true for us?
Definitely not true for us.
Okay.
Not true for us because I don't know. I don't know many people who can say from the first time when I saw my now wife, I knew straight away that was who I was going to get married to. Was it true for you?
Do you not have an inkling that? Because I think at the beginning, I think you have this. You feel like you only talk to people who are potentials in that sense.
Are you talking about, so potential to date, yes. Potential to be in a romantic relationship with, yes. But to see marriage as, I'm talking about first or second time, you're seeing marriage as I'm going to get married to this person. That's the part where I'm like, really?
Yeah, I think you have this mental calculation with people that you say, you know what, this person I'm dating, I see this long term on this side.
Yes.
And you speak to some people and you say, nah, this is never going to be long term.
But then you wouldn't be dating those people.
You wouldn't be dating them. And so that's the thing. I think what they were, I don't know, like what I would say is that what they were better at doing is almost like being intentional where we still do the mental arguments with ourselves. Like I think they were better at the filtering from the very beginning.
Right.
I think so.
So you think they're able to reconcile, okay, I see long term with this person.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes. So because I think we meet some people and we say this person is a potential for a long term. and we still try to process that in our heads. But I think you always know.
So you think they just had language for? They were just more like, I'm going to get married to this person.
Yeah, they had language for it.
But then they even if you have the inkling, that's still internal. They communicated it to the person.
They communicated, and that's what we don't do.
That's what I mean. But it's the boldness to be able to know that about yourself, your intentions, and the person enough to be like, I'm going to marry you. Yeah. I was thinking it might also be that maybe times have changed. Obviously, times have changed, but to the degree that before then, it might have been the man's choice to be like, I'm going to marry you.
Yeah.
In a way that maybe now you can choose all you want. It's still not like you can choose all you want, or you can have the intention to choose whatever. But maybe it's more of a level playing field now, where the woman also, you can choose her, but it doesn't have to be. She doesn't have to choose you.
Yeah.
Not saying then she had to choose you, but I feel like then it was more communicated that if I'm choosing you, then I don't know. I've made the most.
If we're speaking, like at the time, if we were speaking, if we were talking, we are on some sort of journey towards something.
Yeah.
I think we don't have that now. I think we have more. Okay, we have options here. Like these are potential people that I might commit to long term. And yeah, we do more dithering now.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's what it is.
Which way is better?
I would say, I mean, I'm a prisoner of my experiences, right? Like I've experienced this, and I feel like the choice feels better to me.
Which one have you experienced?
Like having the choice. Like speaking to like a few people and saying, "Oh, this person might be it. This person might be it," and then deciding, you know what, like this is my person. And it doesn't mean you're talking to all of them at the same time, but you're like at different periods in time, you know yourself more, and then you decide. And I think that's it. I fell into that one experience I know many of us share now. Is you're talking to someone, you're talking to this person consistently, you're seeing them, and something happens, and a switch happens.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is it. This is the long-term thing. Yeah. And this is the person I'm going to.
And sometimes you can't even explain what it is. Yes. Well, you can later, but at the time, all you know is something switched. Yeah.
I think that's it. I think it's also. So I think we came from a point of, okay, this might be possible until it becomes, this is it definitely. But they came from a.
They were more certain.
Yeah, this is where we're starting from. So.
Somebody might hear this and think, because it's probably true of many other things, is they had more certainty about many things in a way that we've just grown more uncertain.
Yes.
It's a what's it? Is it epidemic, pandemic, whatever? It's something that's like
it's an epidemic of choice in it.
Like
we have choices with everything. Yeah.
So it's the choice that's ruining it for.
Like we can't go to when you want to buy cereal. Like you see a million options at Tesco.
Yeah.
That's like we are living in a time now where we are forced to make choices, and we're forced to like think we're analyzing stuff. But we don't know if it's the right way. But I prefer this.
I wonder if it's like, I know obviously we're both men speaking about this, but if women in our generation prefer guys to be more assertive from the second date and say, you know what, I'm going to marry you. If that's like the mecca of, you know, I choose you, or the decision or intentionality. Do women, do you think, I don't know, what do you think? Do I think women prefer that now, or are they fine with how it is now, where we talk for a while, get to know, and then, who knows?
I think, so I know many women who have received multiple like proposals just randomly, and I think they still prefer the women I know from conversations with them. I think I've heard them say, like, at least get to know me first, at least.
Yeah. Like slow down. Yeah. To be honest, that might have been the same response even back then too.
Even back then,
because you're hearing somebody declare their intentionality. It doesn't mean that from the minute they said it, the woman was like, okay, there probably was still a version of, okay, relax, let's
talk.
Yeah, my name is. Okay. There was another thing that was on my mind to talk about with some of the responses I've been getting on the podcast. Part of the reason why the podcast exists in the first place was after I lost my dad, realizing how removed I was from his lived experience and his history, if you like. I've been doing my best to bridge that gap, not just in my own family, but also I think just in general from that generation to our generation. But there is still there's a level of disconnect, I think, in the nuclear family or in immediate families. You don't really see people of our generation connect with their parents' history. Either they don't know much of their parents' past, how they've come to be the way they are, or they know it from the cliff notes. They just know what maybe has come up in an argument the highlights. Yeah. But why has that always been the case, or are we just doing poorly as our generation in connecting with our parents' history, knowing how they got to be the way they are and where they've come from?
I don't know if it's always been the case. I know that's due to the fact that we have time on our side now, and
what do you mean?
I mean, we have now on our side.
Oh yeah.
I think we have the ability and opportunity to correct it. I don't know if my dad knew that much about his dad's life. I think it's a case of I don't know really, but I know I didn't know a lot of my dad's life. I think I'm living. My dad had me when he was 24, and
wow,
yeah, he was 24, and
wow. Actually, my dad had me when I was 27.
Yeah, and like
I think of myself at 27.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm experiencing life now, and I'm like, sometimes I step back and think, oh, what would my dad have done now? What would my dad have done in this situation? And I think especially because of this podcast, really, when we started talking about it, I think I started being more deliberate about asking them about what their lives were like when they were my age now. So asking them about, okay, how did you deal with the responsibility of the craziest thing for me was the first time I moved out and moved in with my wife now, and I was responsible for closing the door at night. I didn't understand that.
Because previously,
Daddy always closes the door. No, but
that's a funny thing, yeah.
No, but like, closing the door for the household. Like locking up everything, making sure all the lights are off for the household, not just my bachelor part. Like,
For like, I'm responsible for the security.
Yes.
At night, we're all going to bed. Okay, everybody must be secure.
When there's a sound, I have to. When there's a noise,
but there's no script for it. Like, you just
script, but you have a manual. You have someone who's gone through it. We have people like, and that's so when I said we have now on our side, we have opportunity on our side. It's the fact that we can always, like, we're learning these things now, and we could always go back and ask, and we don't have to do exactly what they did.
Yeah,
we just have to know how they felt. We have to know what they thought.
Yeah,
and still make our own decisions.
Yeah,
but like, just take advantage of the free resource that's there.
I remember when my dad turned 40, obviously, I was there. I think I also somehow deferred my 10th birthday. So he turned 40 and I celebrated my 10th birthday in the same year. But so trying to ask when my dad was 30, obviously I was alive. When I turned 30, I had an existential crisis. I thought my life was ending. I thought, this is going by my trajectory. I should be here now. I should be here. I had all these metrics. So trying to speak to my dad and glean from him what a 30-year-old should be. At 30, he had 2 children. His experience would have been very different from my experience because I didn't have children at 30. So I wonder if a lot of our parents now maybe can't relate entirely to how we live, because the ages that we're at now, when they were that age, they were in a different phase of life. So it's almost like, speaking to a 50 or 40-year-old parent now, I don't know. I feel like just at the ages we would be, we wouldn't have half of the experience they have in some areas of life, like parenthood or just whatever else. They would have had it in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's partly it. I think the world is changing so quickly, and the world changed so quickly between their time and ours.
It's causing the disconnect, maybe.
Yeah, and we're struggling to recognize the world they lived in.
Yeah, because it's like far from ours.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking as well that the world, so between their time and the time before theirs, it must have been so quick as well.
It's hard to say because it might have belonged to the same era. Okay, maybe they were wearing different. The fashion was different, music was different, and things like that. But values, maybe cultural values, were probably still intact from what their parents were like and what they were. In a way that, I mean, we saw the internet.
Yes.
We played outside and inside. In a way that, I don't know. My parents, let me say, they didn't have the internet till they were in their later years or whatever. So we just have it different.
But like we're saying we have a difference. Let's use the internet now. Imagine going from the generation that didn't have radio to the generation that did, and imagine going from a generation that depended on radio to see the outside world to the generation that had televisions that had BBC in Akure.
So you're saying that it's always been the way.
I think there's a chance.
That's true.
I think it might be. I think it's.
Man, so there's always a disconnect one generation to the next.
Yeah, and I think the generation after ours, they probably have.
What is it? I forget all the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen this, Gen X, Gen. I always forget the alphabets, but it's probably there's already a generation after ours that sees the world in a very different way than we do.
Of course.
And we'll struggle. We may see each other and cross paths and stuff like that, but there will be a disconnect in terms of what we value and what they value,
and the way we see the world,
and the way
we express how we see the world. There'll be so many changes.
Yeah,
and I think what we can do now is make sure that at least for the generation before us, we are attempting to connect to them.
I was thinking, like, what would be if it's a cycle that's always going to be there, then is there even a point trying to connect the generations?
I think there is, because we learn so much.
Yeah.
I think there are many what we see as a totally new world might be, okay, this has always been there.
There's a phrase. What's the phrase? There's a.
The more things change, the more they say the same.
There's even a Yoruba adage that I don't remember now, but it doesn't matter how many. I'm translating. It doesn't matter how many clothes a child has. It can't have as many rags as his father. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. I love Yoruba adages, but yeah.
So we're probably thinking, oh, this is a completely new world, and but there are things we can learn. There are shared experiences.
Yeah. Or mistakes even.
Or mistakes.
Things that
And and I think I started doing a lot of that, and I think one of the things I started doing was being more intentional, being more deliberate about seizing out those stories.
Yeah.
So and not just seizing out the highlights, seizing out the
flaws,
normal stuff.
Yeah,
like what did taking a walk then look like to you? I was talking about when I was speaking to my mom a few weeks ago, and we're just talking, and she mentioned the fact that it was her birthday in April, and like all of that, and I just went straight for the question. I was like, how do you feel about being older? Like, do you feel like you're old now?
What did she say?
She's like, her answer was really, her answer was surprising. She said she felt like, because she had me at 21, and she spent so much of her time raising us, and she felt like from her 50s, she started getting a new chance to be young.
Wow.
And she's trying as much as she can to experience this, to enjoy this, to enjoy the random trips. She doesn't. She doesn't like. She has a bunch of friends that she hangs out with. She's trying to enjoy that. What does friendship look like at this age? What does being a sibling look like at this age?
Independent of being a mother.
Being a mother.
Yeah. Oh man.
So she was shedding her identity as a mother, or she was being a different type of mother now, and I'd never thought about that, and it was revealing. But the only reason I knew was because I asked this out of whack question.
Yeah. And not enough of us ask questions.
Yes.
Well, it depends. If the relationship has been strained through the friction that comes from the disconnect anyway, then one of either side, either this person doesn't want to ask and this person doesn't really want to tell because, but we should really ask questions a lot. I went through a season of asking a lot of questions. I remember I have this, not theory, it's probably true, but doesn't matter how well you know your dad, you can never know him as a husband. Only your mom can never know him as a husband. So to understand what he was like as a husband, only your mom can have that information. There's only so much you can learn from observing him as a husband and think, okay, well, this is the way husbands should be. Well, it's like, okay, well, why don't you speak to the person who actually saw him as a husband? And
or even like other relationships.
Observing
him as a friend.
Yeah, exactly. And use that to inform this, as opposed to the single story of, well, my dad was like this to me, so therefore this is how I, or how was, you only, maybe now, because I'm, older as well now, I'm thinking there's so many things that inform how I am. So the danger of somebody seeing me now and picking my home life and using that to define me. And it's like, well, yes, I'm that way at home, of course, but other things inform why I'm that way at home. And they're just as important. And it's like, isn't it worth exploring more,
Yeah, it is. And I think exploring is also like helps you understand yourself better, at least. I think we'll never know what combination of behaviors we have are driven by nature or nurture.
Yeah, true.
But like at least we can try to understand, okay, the people before us, the people who who we grew up like learn everything from, and the people who also give us our biology. How did they react to things? How did they deal with these things? How did they fall in love? How did they argue with their partners? How they argue with their friends? And
it will help. I was having this discussion recently, actually, with family members, so I won't go too deep into it, but it helps you know what to retain and what to leave out, especially out of your character or out of your value set. It's just like understanding that the person in your life who you regard as they're that way because they experienced this thing, good or bad, trauma or whatever, and because of that, that's why they're that way, and that's why they make certain decisions. So, but then if you only see the result and tailor your life after something, it's like, well, how you don't have the same trauma, you don't have the same. So in a way, it's almost like break it down first, and then take the good, and then
Yeah, there's really, if you think about it, there's really no need to experience passed down trauma that comes from experiences that you didn't experience yourself. There's no, like, if someone survived the war and then behaved some way because they survived the experience, and they react to things in a way because of that experience. If you're further removed from it, you have a chance to break out of it.
Yeah, but that's so many things you have to be aware enough,
of course,
and then it's also hard to go against what comes so naturally. Like, I'm going to say this, and it's not controversial, it's a term people use all the time, but like people who experience what we now call maybe daddy issues or things like that, some of them know exactly what the root cause of it is, but it's still a hard thing to go against nurture for the last decades or whatever, and suddenly try and forge a new, well, I'm going to be this way now because it's like us.
And the work doesn't start until you start it.
Yeah. Well, until you even know. So first you have to know, and then you have to be doing something else.
So
it's tough, man. I think adult life now is harder than it was for our parents. But wait, hold on. But I think every generation says this.
We are living the best life in history.
Well, so here's some of the things here's some of the things that I yes and no. No, because I'll just say no. You already have the yeses covered. No, because the choice is crippling.
Yeah,
across the board.
of course.
And that in itself is enough to take somebody who might have the vim to just dampen it, because it's like what you were saying before about cereals. Like, so again, so choice in itself is I see it as a negative.
Fair enough.
So that much choice for any given thing is just too much, and that makes it a tough time to be alive. If you seek, I don't know, it makes it harder to be disciplined, because you have to now pick between 20 things when you just want to do the one thing. Let's trade, because if I say all the negatives, you're just going to develop counters, and you're going to be like, well, for that point, no.
So I think it's yes and no as well. I think I think it's like and it's also perception. I think on the yes side, I think we're healthier. We know more about how, like, we know more about. I was just talking about like passed down trauma.
Yeah.
At some point, you didn't have the language or the tools to deal with that. I think now we do to some extent, and we'll know better in the future. I think what you're saying about choice, I think to some people having choice is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think okay, going into analysis paralysis, okay, yeah, you could get to that, but some people would rather still have the choice.
Yeah, well, not of 20 things. Most people want name something that has improved from having 3 or 5 choices to having 20. Very
20.
few things.
Oh, I would rather have
where 3 or 5 choices won't suffice. You need 20.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that's like
imagine only being able to imagine your Sunday, like imagine only having 3 things to do on a Sunday. Ever.
That would no. The ever part, no. The ever part isn't. That's not really. That's not a fair part, because every Sunday, if I only had a choice between 3 things, that would simplify my Sunday immensely.
So you'd go to church today. Next Sunday you go to the park.
Okay.
And next Sunday you hang out with friends.
Look,
and you can only
I can exist. We're talking about Sunday. One day I can exist with that being myself, rather than the alternative is having a choice between not just hang out with friends. 20 friends have parties, 20 parks. I live close to 20 parks, and there are 20 churches to go to. That's crazy.
and that's my life now, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, for a time. Yeah, but I think like most things, like past the point.
Yeah.
With me, let me say, past the point, it's just easier having fewer options.
Fair enough.
Because it helps me get to what I actually want to do quicker. But there could be, for example, M&Ms.
Yeah.
I want 20 different, that's something.
Yeah. I know my dad, for a time in my childhood, for a period in my childhood, I think like for most of my teenage years, every Sunday was the same for me. It was wake up in the morning, go to church,
Come back and
in
sports.
the evening there were 2 choices. Either Uncle Tony came to our house or we went to Uncle Tony's house.
But that's good for that. How old were you?
I was 8 to like 13.
Look, I think that's structure. That's good.
Yeah.
What, compared to what? I think also why I see choice as a bad thing is it then, even where there isn't any choice, you still hesitate to take action because of the illusion of choice. So you're like, oh, I don't prefer this, but that's because I imagine there are 10 more of it. So it's like, well, actually, no, this does what it needs to do, and I don't need to choose between this and 50 other things. Yeah. And I come from a school of making less do more. So I come from like, most people live it out now, where it's like you make the best out of fewer things.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't even by choice. Mine was just, hey, listen. I didn't grow up with the most, so I had to make the most out of what I grew up with.
Yeah.
And I think it's better that way, man. I don't know. I can't think of anything that's better. But anyway, I think our parents had less choice with certain things.
Yes.
So in a way, especially within the realms of this conversation, their lives were easier.
Yes, in a way.
In a way. So can I just say I was right in that we have it tougher?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to win, but anyway, I think because sometimes I think about it, I'm like, oh man. Fewer choices, they could just, you're coming out of university then, doctor, engineer, whatever, what's that one? Doctor, engineer.
You couldn't be a product manager.
What's that? Every podcaster, what's that?
You can't do that.
Podcaster, no. So some things are just out of bounds.
Like,
but also
you're
the
the
world.
best footballer in the world, and you have to go to med school.
I had to go to med school, man. Oh my gosh, yeah. I had to go to med school.
I mean, like, one of the most, like, my dad always talks about this guy. I've forgotten his name. I miss him. He, like, someone from the podcast will know, like, especially with the audience.
Yeah.
He was one of the best wingers in Nigerian football history. And he was a lawyer. And
Wow.
he had to be a lawyer because that was his thing.
Wow.
And he was such a great winger. He was such a great footballer. He won the Nations Cup or something. And he still went to law school.
Wow.
Imagine that.
Do you feel like he felt like he had to have the backup? He had to have the plan B of...
Yeah, I guess.
Back then, it wasn't set up. You couldn't be a footballer then and be successful
No.
in any real way.
No.
There was something else that came up in a recent episode. And I think... I don't know how long we've been speaking for. Maybe this will be the last one. One of the guests on the podcast, there were a couple, the Olale's, spoke about migrating from Nigeria to the UK. The reasons for migrating were varied, but by and large, it was because they wanted their children to have education in a different way. Some of the other guests on the podcast who spoke about migrating didn't really go into it, but there was hardship involved in moving from Nigeria to the UK. Some people even hinted at, if in hindsight, it might have just been better to remain in Nigeria and live in Nigeria. A lot of our generation, maybe not in the diaspora, maybe in Nigeria, because of how Nigeria is now, may think it is better to leave Nigeria and live somewhere else, especially maybe the UK, the States, or wherever. Is that still... We're speaking from the UK, so all the caveats involved. This isn't a comment about one place being anything, not like that. But is it still, all things being equal, quality of life, standard of living, all of those things being equal, is our generation still primed to think like that? Like, outside of Nigeria is better? All things being equal.
I think there is a migration crisis happening right now in Nigeria. Like there's a brainwave where people are, especially the middle class, especially people who are educated, who've been trained to a certain level. They do feel the need to quote unquote escape from Nigeria as soon as they can. And I think it's something that probably wasn't the case about like a few years ago, a decade ago, and it's just coming back. And but we've not done any research on it.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
like we don't know which communities it's affecting. We don't know which social groups it's affecting. But there are anecdotal like accounts of people having this bunch of friends, this bunch of 20 friends that play together or hung out every week, and then every single person is leaving. I have a friend who talked about his football team being decimated. So you go play five-a-side with a bunch of guys every week,
man.
and every other day someone is moving to Canada.
Wow.
And someone's moving to UK. People having whole jobs and careers, and then moving to the UK for their master's degrees with the hope of just bringing their family and staying. And it's a thing that's becoming more, well, that seems to be becoming more common. Is it something that's going to be a long-term thing? Maybe not, because there are also accounts of people like the reverse migration that's happening as well.
Yeah,
So people
yeah.
are talking about that, about moving back, just going back and doing what they need to do. I think the other part of it is, especially in the diaspora, I think the links back are becoming more pronounced and stronger. So in a way, that's probably eases the journey out, because you can live here or live in the UK, live in Canada, live in America, and still know, okay, I can still work.
Yeah.
I can still do some work remotely. I can still hire remotely. I can still...
Yeah. The routes are open.
The routes are more open now. The bridges are there. Like I can still go back every year.
Yeah.
There's some people that go back every single year.
Yeah. How they afford it?
Out-
That's a different conversation. But
yeah. So
yeah.
but I think what I know for sure is that definitely the loneliness and the alienation and the separation from the rest of, from where you came from back then is less pronounced now. You can come here, you can come into Canada and have a community.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You can come into America and have friends already there.
Yeah.
You can come into London and go to Afro Nation.
Yeah.
See people.
Or just come into London.
Just come into London.
Just come to London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's different. And I think it's might be easier socially than now socially than it's ever been.
Yeah. I think maybe a lot. I can't speak for people in my generation. I'm not but I think a lot of people in our generation, if given the right opportunity, would consider. Certainly from some of the conversations I've had, and even, I think even me too, to some extent, given the right opportunity, it'd be something. Why wouldn't you? Given the right opportunity, why wouldn't you?
I think what's also interesting is the different. I've spoken to my parents about the difference between when they moved and how their experience, because we moved the same time, and they had a totally different experience from what we had.
Because of the age that they were when they moved, and then
So I moved to the UK. Like the first time I moved I was 15, and I was at an age where
still being formed.
I was at an age where I could go into a room and decide I need to make friends here or die.
And you're not dead, so
so I had to do it. I had to, I didn't fully know myself, so I was learning myself, and also developing my social self with people as well, in a way that they came formed. They knew their whole lives. They had whole lives that they'd left behind and just packed up and left.
Man.
And it must have been a different experience. It felt more like at the time I thought this was really difficult for me. But then I was experiencing life. It must have been level 2 for me if it was level 100 for them.
I'm just trying to imagine now you uprooting your life and moving to another country and restarting there, and
not having leaving all your friends,
your whole support network.
Leaving people who came to your wedding, leaving people who you hung out with every week.
Yeah, that's tough.
And then deciding, I'm leaving now.
That's tough.
Yeah, it must have been, and not we were at a time. We were coming at a time when the language was easier for us. Picking up nuances of speaking was easier for us. Yeah. Picking up social cues was easier for us.
And a lot of us laugh at some of our parents ignoring that fact. Ignoring that fact, because it's like, you try talking with an American accent when you move to America at age 40. So, it doesn't work that way.
So things we know now. I think I've learned to be kinder to them.
Yeah.
For the struggles of adapting to a different society.
So we have context now, because you're older as well now. So we have context.
What do you mean I'm older?
Oh, you didn't know? So this podcast is for people over the same ages. There's the most watched video so far that has come onto the podcast has been. I'll probably insert it in the podcast, right? And the question is, not the question, but the comment that was made by my guest, Mr. Biodun, was as a husband, he gives his wife an allowance every month. He picked a day, maybe 20 something, and without fail, he makes sure. And it may not be. His words were, "It may not be enough, but as a man, as a husband, you have to give your wife an allowance every month. And he believes that should still be in practice. And that's still what he does. It's so polarizing. It's so polarizing. And some days I just look at the comments and try and, but there seems to be just the same amount of people on this side and the same amount of people on this side. And I've thought about it in terms of what do I think. And well, I'll start with what I say so I don't put you on the spot. I think it's a different time.
Yeah.
I think it's a different time. I think what's behind it, the intention behind it is noble. But I think it hints at a value system that we don't currently live in. So noble as it may be, maybe it should have a different expression. Still could be monetary. I mean, if you're balling like that and, depending on the phase of life you're in, if one person isn't working or whatever else. But I think as a rule, should it be, as a man or as a husband, part of your duty is I give my wife pocket money every month, and regardless of anything else, she just gets money from me every month for her upkeep. She can do whatever she wants with it. I think that's under review.
Would you find it different? I have a friend who has a subscription to a flower delivery every month.
Yeah.
So every month, whichever flower is in season, that comes in.
Yeah.
Would you find that as condescending?
No. I would try and randomize it though. But yeah, no, as a concept, no, I wouldn't find that.
I always think what you said about the thought behind it. I think that's one way to look at it, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And I think people should just do what feels good to them.
That's the thing.
I think at the end of the day, so if he said, oh, you know what, instead of giving her that money, I would have this mysterious personal shopper to buy a new thing for that exact amount of money for her every month. I think it's just an expression of the way you feel about your relationship. And I think everyone should have that.
Yeah.
I think I can't impose what I think is right on them.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think I always think of the fact that money discussions are so contextual.
Completely. And once you remove the context of it, like some of the comments are purely about the financial side of it, and he gives that it may not be enough, but and yes, there's the financial side, but also why does he do that? And what is the nuance behind what makes that something he should do? I don't know. There's parts of it missing that you
okay, if she were doing something for him every month as well, does that make it, it's just so contextual. Like you can't, it's very, very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there are instances where you can say this is just completely wrong.
Yeah.
But it's very, very hard without the exact context to make judgments on what that should stand for or what that means.
Yeah.
To
be fair to him, he wasn't using it to say this is what everybody should do. He said
it's a good thing.
Yeah, and he said what he did and what he trained his sons to do.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really prescribing it as the way to be a man.
Yeah.
But also, you say something like that on any kind of platform, and people are going to latch on and be like, "Well, that's wrong," and then how can you live like that? And then it's like, well, something that works in your family may be the wrong thing for my family, and
and in my family it could be every month we have a date night, and it has to be the most expensive restaurant I can get, and I'm going to spend this amount of money on it, and that's it.
And that works for you, and
that works for you.
And somebody else might think, well, why date night? She doesn't like this. It's like, it doesn't matter. The point is, you work it in your system.
Yeah.
Find. Maybe it sounds like what we're agreeing on is there should be an element of consistency. It sounds like maybe because neither one of us has said anything that goes against the fact that it's just the consistency of it. I mean, with the flower delivery, it's a subscription, so it's consistent. Maybe.
And if it's consistency that works for you, because you said maybe I would randomize it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what works.
Yeah.
So it's like in your relationship, you just look at what's works. And I think the reason I'm more amenable to seeing things like this now is also because I've seen what relationships look like before mine, and I'm in one now, and I know how do you make, like, I'm every day, like, because of how I'm a baby in this relationship then. So, young, you know.
No comments. But you're one of my older guests. Yeah.
Well, I am at every point deciding what feels right and what I think works for now and what I think should work for a long period of time.
Yeah. That's a good way of thinking about it. Is treating the relationship as something you, like a child, and you nurture and grow.
At some point, like life is long.
Yeah. Oh, that's my phrase. I say that.
Life is long, maybe sometimes it stop working, and you have to make changes. Cool. Maybe sometime I'll become, like, if I were, like, maybe sometime you become a mega millionaire and you decide, oh, you know what, like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
To, you know, make sure she knows, she remembers that my husband is balling.
It's like, I mean, that's how I do it. Just,
okay.
I sense you don't rate me. No, yeah. But so that's, I'm glad we've spoken about some of those things. I've been thinking about doing some kind of review catch-up session. Because some of the themes that come up in the podcast, it can fly by, especially if you're watching like an hour-long podcast. You hear something and it's just like, whoosh, and you don't hear another viewpoint. You don't hear something else that sort of says something different to that. So I think it's interesting to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody watching it and what might be going through as an observer of the podcast.
What have you found to be the most interesting thing from doing this?
As a question, as an experience, like, what do you mean?
Just something someone has said that you found very, very interesting.
That I have found most interesting. I feel like I should have a pre-programmed response for this. What have I found to be the most interesting? Oh, okay. One of the earlier guests on the podcast, we spoke about the Biafra War, and I didn't expect the level of candor or detail that he went into. I expected he would say, oh yes, it happened. I don't know. I mean, I hope to speak about it, but not to the degree that he did. But he went into detail about the quality of life that he had then, living from scraps, and he described it. The episode is I'll link it in the I'll put a link into it. But it was interesting to me because it suddenly made me realize, because he was also somebody that didn't live too far from where I lived then, so it was very possible that I'd walked past him, we'd seen each other, and that's what I mean. That's kind of where the podcast came out of. So I have no clue what this man has been through, and only through the podcast I realized, man, look at this life experience. Look at what he's lived. Yeah. And he's here just talking to me about, we're having coffee and it's like, or whatever. And it's like, you don't know. And it's like, well, it's worth exploring, because now I'm better informed, or now I'm able to contextualize his life. And I'm like, if he does something, I mean, we're not like friends and I don't see him every day, but if a person like that does something, their actions are now interpreted through the lens of everything that they've been through. So I've really found that interesting to just learn people's lives through something that's just like, wow,
And that's the thing, like, I think people are, like, we are walking, talking stories, right? Like, we have stories trapped in us.
Yeah.
We have experiences that only come out in stories, in narratives. And in a way, we're brimming with all of these, waiting to just express them. And I think that's what questions do. Good questions just basically unmask certain parts of us that we thought we'd left behind, and you're like, something like this is an opportunity to just discuss them. It's interesting. I think the thing I found most interesting was I didn't realize how much of a communal thing dating was growing up for them. I didn't realize how, like, if you were seeing someone, like if you're seeing someone, it was almost like a community then.
Your friendship group was part of that relationship.
Bring them into a relationship, and this person, like, this person was a friend to everybody in the group, and this person who needs someone to start dating is introduced to someone else in the group.
Yeah.
To become part of that community, and
Yeah.
I think I found that interesting. I don't know if, like, in a way, my friends, like, I don't know if we've done that. Like, I mean, we've been friends for years. I don't know if
I don't know if we've done. We do somehow have a community, or we've had a community in the past, and it's it's morphed and things like that. But it has been part of the relationship.
Yeah.
But when you were saying that now, I remember something my mom said one time, and she said she finds this new generation odd because you break up with somebody, but they're still sort of in your circles, kind of, like on the... Because she was just like, back in her time, because of what you were describing, everyone's relationship, if somebody was to break up with somebody, they were excommunicated. It was like, we don't speak to them. We don't speak to them anymore. And that became so, and then they would have a different, and I found that, that's interesting. So she was like perplexed. She was like, well, you guys, how is it that you still have this person in your circle and you guys still,
And it's like, it's also dating by social proof. It's like, it was one of your first few episodes. I think it was, I don't know, it wasn't your mom. It was someone who, like, I think someone your mom knew, but he was talking about the fact that, oh yeah, like I knew, like we grew up together.
Yeah.
And
there was a lot of that.
I was dating this person, and like, but everyone knew her, and so for me to start dating her, I spoke to my friend, and then he said, "Oh yeah, she's a good girl, and we should." So it was that kind of like. Now it looks like Gossip Girl to me.
Maybe by the time you've spoken to 5 people, you're confident enough to be like, I'm going to marry you.
Yeah, maybe that's why it was easier.
Because you've done your homework and you're like, okay. Everyone's told me she's a good girl. She's a so I think I've decided. Yeah,
and
that's true.
And you didn't date one person. You dated their whole friend group.
Yes. Yeah. In a way that we don't do now.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think anyway. There's so many things that are involved in terms of the individualisticness that we now just like everything's like even the way we've spoken in this conversation, because we don't want to get cancelled or whatever, we said things like but for me but for me, and it's like everything has to become, because it's like,
oh, that's another thing. I found out, like, in listening to, and maybe it's just listening to parents generally listen to that generation over 60s, they don't caveat things.
No,
they don't. They say what they think, and that's it. Like, you're not going to beat them.
What? I said it.
I think, but that's the general gist of listening to H2H.
Yeah.
It's the fact that people know things, and they know things for them, and they know their truth, and and I guess that's what comes from living a truth for 60 years. You're not going to shout me out of this thing.
No, exactly. And if it's my experience, then I'm not making it up to. This is just me recounting something that I actually went through, So
So when your mom says, like, I remember your mom saying something once about, so someone is single in this group and you have other men. Yeah,
and like, how is that possible? Like, you haven't,
like, why?
And I was like, why is that my?
But it's a truth that they lived with, and they're unapologetic about it.
Yeah. So that's true.
That's been like, I'm scared of saying that word on the podcast.
Unapologetic.
Yeah, it's like, it always trips me.
say it 3 times.
Don't worry.
Listen, thank you so much, man. I'm just glad we were able to review some of the things and talk about it. And it's nice being, I know we're still in front of the cameras, but it's nice thinking of it from somebody who just watched a few of the episodes or listened to it. So, it's been great. I think, as usual, what I've been saying recently is, if anybody knows somebody who they want to be on the podcast, parent of a friend or parent of whatever, the email will be in the show notes, as well as previous episodes. Just essentially look in the show notes, find contact information, and I'd love to have as many guests as are willing on the podcast. Thank you guys.
And a diverse range as well.
More information will be in the show notes, and follow me on Instagram. Follow the podcast on Instagram, H2Age, on TikTok, H2Age, and all the relevant platforms. Big appreciation to Lawrence. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Peace.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna clap and then we're gonna hit it off. No, I will clap.
Ooh.